Nope. Just one of you guys turn them in. Explain what Weber's law states with the process of perception. Detail a real life example to help with your understanding. There we go. So we mentioned this on Thursday, Friday at assignment, talking about this. So maybe if you have an example already for Weber's law from the assignment, you can put that in. And the grades aren't.
I saw you read the bar range for history. I completely forgot.
Dude.
I have him here. So there's 3 from last week, wasn't it?
Just 3, yep. Okay. Thank you. Who? I do. Yep. There you go, Raven. Yep. You need another minute, or are we good? Christian, you good to go? All right, cool. All righty, so Weber's law states the process of perception. What do we have? What do we got? What do we have here? Kiara, what do you got for your bell ring? You don't have it done. Okay. Allison, what do you have?
The principle that to be perceived as different to stimuli must differ by constant.
Okay, yeah, good job, good job. So the Weber's law is just stating that we talked about difference threshold, we talked about just noticeable difference. But with Weber's law, there has to be a minimum percentage of a change in order for you to perceive the difference in it. And what example maybe do you come up with? Allison, what example do you come up with?
I said imagine me present a sound and then slowly increase the decibel. And the patient may be able to tell that the volume.
Okay, all right, good, good job, good job. What else? What else? Hadley, what do you have for an example? Then you'll notice it, right? Yeah, and there's a good example with that. It's especially if it's at a low setting already, if the volume's already low and you start increasing it, you could probably hear the difference right away. But let's say if it's at almost max, right? Let's say it's at like 98 and you bump it up to 100, it's already blaring, okay, to the point where it's almost deafening. You think you'll notice that change? Chances are most likely not, okay? So that's what Weber's law states. And I know I gave the example the other day with purchasing. When you're going in a store, you're buying a product, right? And let's just say there's $1 off cereal. I think that's the example I gave. To go, well, you're saving $1, it's $3.99, now it's $2.99. Great, awesome, right? So you probably buy that. And if, let's say there's a shirt for 70 bucks and they have $1 off. Chances are you won't see the real deal with that, right? It's not as big of a percentage change as what you're saving with the cereal, but at the same time, you're saving $1, if that makes sense. Right. So with the perception of you're saving more percentage wise, chances are you're going to make that purchase. You're going to think it's a pretty good deal. But when it comes to actually saving that $1, there's no difference there. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So again, talking about the difference threshold, talking about sensory adaptation. What is sensory adaptation? Let's review that real quick before we move on. What is that, Raven?
The intensity of the stimulus diminishes over.
Yeah, good job. So if you're constantly being stimulated by some sort of sensation, whether it's sound, whether it's touch, whether it's vision, whatever it might be, over time, you will adapt to that surrounding, right? You will adapt to that stimulus. I know sitting up in that tree stand this Saturday, I was getting cold. It's like, oh, well, I'm going to have to deal with it, right? And eventually I just adapted to it. I could just sit through it and obviously go hunting and not think about the cold as much as I'm adapting to my surroundings. Good. Raven, what's up? Yeah, let me sign your pass quick. All right, good. And what else did we talk about? Absolute threshold. What is that? Kiara, what's absolute threshold? Are you kidding? 12, 6. Christian, want to help her out? Absolute threshold, an example of it. There you go, Ray.
Level of stimulus necessary for a stimulus to affect you.
Yeah, the first detection of a stimulus. I know I gave an example of what, seeing a can of light from 30 miles away. I think that's a little ridiculous. It's pretty hard to see, but hey, maybe you can. And that's kind of generalized what the book gives you. But we all know everybody's absolute threshold is a little bit different, depending on maybe impairments, maybe some sort of disability. What else? What else do we talk about? Signal detection theory. What was signal detection theory? Remember? Brittany, remember?
That sensation.
Yeah, good job, good job. So this is a perception of, let's say, a sound, and we have no idea where that sound's coming from. We can't perceive and understand where that sound is coming from. So I know I gave the example of what, riding in my car. We hear the rattling of something. We have no idea where it's coming from, no clue. So what do we end up doing? Just turn up the volume, right? Try to ignore it, block it out. In all reality, you probably shouldn't do that, but hey, that's kind of what we all tend to do in that situation. But signal detection theory is you're picking up a perception or you're perceiving some sort of stimulus and you have no idea where that's coming from, right? Where that stimulus is being projected from. And it's something that you're not used to or you're not adapted to over time when driving your vehicle, driving your car. That makes sense? Okay. What else did we talk about? Talk about difference threshold already, just noticeable difference. Weber's law we mentioned. All right, okay, how about we move on today? We're gonna talk about subliminal persuasion and some subliminal messages. I have an assignment for you. Shouldn't take you long, actually. I think you'll enjoy it. Terms for today. Just one term, subliminal persuasion. There you go, subliminal persuasion, just one term for today. All right, so subliminal persuasion, what does it mean? What does it mean? Christian, what does it mean?
So first thing, we go to education of speaking out about people to intentionally try to influence our behavior also presents arguments for why it's possible or at least a fault that that all behavior should be the result of conscious thought.
All right, yeah, good job. Good job. So subliminal persuasion is this idea, it's really performed a lot with marketing, advertisement, of introducing a topic or let's say some sort of influence on people as they're perceiving the ad or perceiving the commercial. Chances are they're more likely going to purchase, let's say, that product or that different type of good. Does that make sense? Okay, so this happens all the time with different forms of advertisement. If you're saving, let's say, $1, if you're saving some money on the purchase of goods, then chances are you're going to purchase that product. And in some cases, they're a little ridiculous with it. There's many advertisements over the years that include sexual activity, sexual behavior, and many of these pictures or these forms of advertisement, thinking that, you know what, sex sells, right? And in many cases, that's true. But with some of these subliminal messages, they kind of gone a little too far, I think. So when you're researching this assignment later, be careful of what you might stumble across, okay? And with Coca-Cola, they're really heavy into that. It was kind of weird, to be honest. But anyway, subliminal messages, people believe that maybe they could be under the influence of, let's say, a marketing tool, or really pushing people's consciousness to actually purchasing an item, or trying to believe, let's say, a certain stimulus or a certain sensation. And it's interesting to know, it's interesting to talk about, because there's a lot of studies done on subliminal persuasion and how it works and how it's successful. And in some cases, maybe not. But it all has to do with what? What did we just talk about? What did we just talk about? Kiara asked you what it was and you said you didn't know. Absolute threshold. Yeah, good job. And reminder real quick, absolute threshold is just how that first detection of a stimulus. And we all know that everybody's absolute threshold might be a lot different, right? And it could be totally different. There could be an impairment, there could be a disability, or just really someone's selective attention might be off, or they might not detect a certain stimulus. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so subliminal persuasion. Interesting story with James McCary. He was a psychologist, more like a marketer in a way, and he wanted to try to boost sales of popcorn and Coca-Cola sales at movie theaters. So he thought, well, if I introduce just a split second, a tenth of a second, just verbiage of buying Coca-Cola or buying popcorn, this might increase the sale of popcorn and Coca-Cola in movie theaters. And he did this. You know how they have ads before movies? This is in the 1950s. So he did this between ads of the movies before the movie actually started. So he's projecting the stimulus to the audience in the movie theater, hoping and maybe praying that unconsciously people would see these messages, these subliminal persuasion, and go out and purchase more popcorn and purchase Coca-Cola. And looking back at it, his research actually at that time was successful. And sales of popcorn, sales of Coca-Cola really boosted just because of his research in the 1950s. So again, with these ads, he was just projecting just a tenth of a second, buy Coca-Cola, buy popcorn. And it just seems odd. And it just doesn't seem like it's something that would actually persuade people to buying products, but it actually worked in the 1950s. And it just goes to show exactly how far maybe subliminal persuasion or messages could advance or help people or promote people into buying products. But at the same time, it's a little scary, isn't it? Yeah. Here you are, you might be able to provoke people or motivate people to purchase an item or do something that in many cases they would never do. And when people heard about this research in the 1950s, they're like, well, what else are companies trying to promote us to buy? What else kind of subliminal messages or persuasion is being introduced as stimulus that we have no idea is happening, right? What is unconsciously driving us through this stage of capitalism in the 1950s? So there's a huge fear of that, right? Obviously. Raven, would you be a little afraid at that time if you heard this subliminal persuasions occurring? You don't know? Okay. Galen, what about you? No, you just like go with the flow. As long as you're not breaking any laws or anything, you're fine. Okay, yeah. But for a lot of people, when they heard about this research, they're like, oh, well, what other type of messages are being presented to us by, let's say, the government, or let's say by an entity or a private business? Kind of scary, right, Kiara? Maybe Pizza Delight and their ads or advertisement trying to persuade you in purchasing a good. What's that? Yeah. Bring your iPad to the store, right? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, well, that's
I'm just joking. All right, so I had some, but it broke up since Thursday. In the presentation, I flashed a picture of a car. Yeah, and I was going to actually ask you guys, oh, did you see it? Like I was going to quickly go through it and then have you obviously fill in the blanks here of what you maybe saw, but it didn't work out the way I wanted. So it is what it is. But with subliminal messages, they do work in a way, right? But again, it depends on people's absolute threshold. It depends if people can consciously understand what they just saw and what they just perceived. Okay, and actually in a movie, do you guys ever see the movie Fight Club before? No, Brad Pitt's in it and Ed Norton. It's a really good movie. It's kind of one of those things though. You're gonna make sure you talk to your parents before you watch it. But Brad Pitt in the movie actually kind of details about subliminal messages within movies. He worked at a movie company and he actually put pictures of sex scenes in the movie, and it would just split second show the picture. And people at the end of the movie would be like, "Ah, there's just something about the movie that just seemed off. It just seemed a little weird when I was watching the tape." And it was just kind of a joke detailing about James McCary's research. Like, oh, well, I don't know if it actually worked or not, but it was pretty fun. But again, depends on someone's absolute threshold, whether or not this is actually triggering a perception of actually promoting people or motivating people to purchase these goods or items. All right, so we already talked about this here. Here's another example with college students and therapy tapes. College students were presented really just about how this was research done at a college level, and they're just like, oh, well, let's just see if these memory tools will help people study for their finals, okay? Because finals is really stressful, right? Preparing for these finals is something that obviously students are really, really nervous about and anxious about. So they thought, well, we'll present about memory tools and self-esteem, and we'll show these tapes to these students for about 2 weeks before finals even starts and during finals week. And the students actually thought that they were receiving some sort of help or aid for finals. In all reality, they really didn't, right? Yeah, some of these tapes were helping with memory, but for the most part, a lot of it was self-esteem as well. But for the most part, there had no inclination of really advancing someone's knowledge of the content that they're studying for. And throughout the study, they switched the tapes, and the students were tricked, right? They're just like, oh, well, the grades actually didn't increase, but at the same time, these students thought that this was a behavior or perception that they were helping and benefiting themselves with finals week. And some of the grades improved, some of them didn't. And it just goes to show that maybe James McCary's persuasion of subliminal messages really wasn't essential. Maybe it wasn't as very effective as what they once thought. But I thought it was interesting, to say the least. I like how they always bring dogs over during finals week. They bring like 5, 6 different dogs from the SPCA, and people just pet them and relax them. And I thought it worked. I actually like to see the dogs during finals week. So guys. All right, backmasking. I'm sure you guys maybe heard of this before. With backmasking, there's these hidden motives or these hidden lyrics inside of songs. And one famous one, Led Zeppelin, "Stairway to Heaven." If you play it backwards, it's actually a satanic message from the devil himself. But I don't know, people kind of just perceive it and they're listening to it like, I can't really pick up on it. But when you apply the lyrics to it, adding different forms of stimulus, then maybe you actually perceive this actually being a thing. Again, when they're researching and when they're interviewing Led Zeppelin, they're like, nah, this isn't really something that obviously is true. But it just goes along with subliminal messages and persuasion, how people can fall into this and actually perceive and think that they are being affected by, let's say, something in the background or something of a song or an advertisement. So real quick, let's play through this. I'll play it for you guys. I think you'll find it interesting. And I'm sure do you guys ever see the movie Little Nicky with Adam Sandler? Here I am talking about Adam Sandler again, Raven. But Adam Sandler kind of makes fun of this backmasking from Led Zeppelin.